Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great introduction, Jose. My name is Rebecca McKenzie. I'm Director of Product Marketing here at Salesforce. And I know I'm between you and wine and champagne and beer. So I promise that I'll keep this fun and light. You're in a really cool location in a theater, so sit back, put your feet up, and enjoy the show. So like I said, I'm Director of Product Marketing at Salesforce, and despite the American accent, I'm actually living in London. So I've been living in London for the last 13 years, and I look after product marketing for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So I have a pretty interesting role at Salesforce. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the overview of what my role is and what my team does, and how we create these strategic programs and scale them internationally. So to start off, the way that my team is structured is we're part of a global HQ team. And so our HQ team is here in San Francisco. You've maybe seen the Salesforce Tower. It really sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's Salesforce. So our team is based here in San Francisco, our HQ team. And then you have me and my team, and we are based all across Europe. And the way that we work in product marketing is a lot of the content and pricing and packaging and messaging comes from our team at HQ. And me and my team's job is to take everything that's created at HQ and package it up so we can create really strategic programs to be leveraged in all of our different international markets. So as well as having me and my team in our integrated programs team, I have go-to-market PMMs as well. And so our go-to-market PMMs sit within regions, so they sit in Northern Europe, UK, Southern Europe, and Central, and take the programs that my team creates and activate them in region. And then we partner with local sales programs managers, enablement teams, and local field marketers in every country to deliver on our ideas. So it's a really interesting strategy because we really sit in the middle of our HQ teams and our local activation. And I can't deliver anything on my own. Any program that I create, I have to convince someone to use their time, their budget, their resource to deliver. So influence is one of the top things that I look for when I'm hiring, and one of the things that I spend a lot of my time doing. And of course, it works both ways. We have a really great, amazing ideas and content that comes out of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa as well, and we want to make sure that that is shared with our teams at HQ and that they're leveraging our content. And before I go any further, I just want to level set on what I'm talking about when I talk about a program. So a program is a coordination of a number of related projects and other activities that are ran over time to deliver benefits to an organization. And there's a big difference between projects and programs. So let's look into those differences so we really know what we're talking about. So a project is about delivering something on time and on budget. The goal is to deliver X, and you have to do it within this allocated time, and you have to do it within this allocated budget. But programs are more complex. With programs, the value is the driver. And if you add additional resources, if you add additional time or additional budget, you're going to deliver increased benefits. So it's not as locked as a project. A project is looking at producing the optimum deliverable. So you're really looking, again, to deliver the best of this thing. Whereas a program, you're looking to integrate multiple different deliverables into an organization's operations. And that's where that influence becomes really important, and that change management, because you're looking to build your programs into other people's structures, and you might be looking to change some of their structures as well. With a project, you have a binary objective. You're going to do X. Whereas with a program, it's complex stakeholder management. And a lot of the benefits of a program are only realized in the future because it's much more long-term and much more agile. And lastly, a project, you're always building a plan to mitigate risk. So you want to deliver something, and you need to think about what are the risks and how am I going to manage those risks. Whereas because programs are much longer, much more complex, they have an open risk profile. So you should expect that your programs are going to be heavily influenced by external factors, and you don't know what those external factors are, but you know that they're going to happen. So it's a little bit complicated. It can be a little bit scary. And this is what I look to deliver in my day-to-day job. So I look to create a series of programs that make up our go-to-market plan So here I have an example of 12 different programs that are activated by our go-to-market PMMs. So me and my team think about these programs and we build them to 80%. And then we work with our local teams to refine that last 20%. Because countries are different, they need to be localized, but most of the time you can scale a lot of that. So I build a program, and then we activate it in all of our different countries around EMEA. But I face a number of challenges. So this is me working on my MacBook every day, and I face a number of challenges when I'm looking at creating these different programs. The first challenge that I face is building and optimizing programs. So what projects do I actually want to run throughout the year to make up my programs? And how am I going to continue to optimize these programs to make sure I'm delivering the best, most effective programs possible? The second challenge I face is selling my programs to my stakeholders and engaging with my stakeholders. Like I mentioned, I cannot deliver anything on my own. The last mile is always delivered by someone else locally, so I have to convince someone to use their time, use their budget, use their resource to deliver on me and my team's ideas. The third challenge I face is how do I scale these programs to maximize value? I'm spending a lot of time doing this work. My team costs a lot of money, so how are we maximizing the output that my team is creating? And lastly, how am I measuring the true value of my programs? So what I'm going to go through the rest of this session is how I manage these different challenges. So let's look at challenge 1, so building and iterating a program. So what we're thinking about is what are the components of a program and how do I adapt my programs throughout the year? So the first thing that I do is that I define the vision of a program. And I'm going to use an example of an events program, and I'm going to use that example through the rest of this session so we can all level set in one example. So for example, what we'd all like to do together this year is we want to build a program of events throughout the year to create and progress pipe for product XYZ. So it sounds fairly simple. What I do next is define the values of the program. So before I do anything else, I need to think about how am I going to operate throughout the year when I'm delivering on this program. So first, for example, with this events program, I want to make sure it's integrated. I want to make sure that deals are progressing as they move through these different events. And every event that happens is related to the one previous. So our field marketers should not be creating some random event. It has to be part of our program, and it has to be related to whatever is happening before and after. The second value is that I want to be innovative and dynamic. So I'm going to challenge me and my team to try something new at every event. So we're always testing and learning, and we're going to adjust where needed. So if something doesn't work, we're going to change it. And lastly, it has to be collaborative. So I want to make sure that I'm partnering closely with my stakeholders, and we're building out a joint plan and a joint program that we're all bought into. The third thing that I'm going to do is define the key projects that make up my program. So let's take this example of this events program with a series of 5 events throughout the year. So the first event that I'm going to do is a webinar. And you should think about each of these as their own separate projects. So we have all of the components that make up traditional project planning. So initiation, planning, execution, performance, and closure. And I have my metric down there. I'm going to be measuring pipe gen. And then I've defined the different events throughout the rest of this program. So I'm going to do a half-day event, then I want to do a demo day where I'm going to be progressing that pipe, then I'm going to do a customer reference event, and lastly, I'm going to close out with an exec dinner so I can really manage that influencer at the top. So all of these events are related to each other. Now, the last thing that I have to think about is preparing for uncertainty and managing change. This is a year-long program, so we can expect that things are going to be very different. I think we can all agree that we didn't know where we would be 6 months at the start of this year. So things change, and we have to plan for that as much as possible. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to expect that there's going to be potential obstacles. And this is traditional project planning. I'm going to list out what are all those things that could go wrong, and how am I going to mitigate these obstacles. Next, it gets into the more complex program planning. So I'm going to expect that there is some sort of unidentified risk. I don't know what that risk is, but I know that it's going to happen. And when it does happen, I'm going to make sure that I maintain contingencies so that this risk doesn't happen in the future or that I know how to mitigate it. The third thing that I'm going to do is expect uncertainty. And I think we all know to do that in our lives now. So I'm going to expect, again, that there's things that are going to happen. I don't know what they are. But that's not going to scare me. My program is adaptable. So I'm going to adapt to shifting business needs and changing market conditions. So you build out your program for the year, but expect that it'll change. It does not have to be at the end of the year exactly what you built at the start of the year. And lastly, I'm going to expect change, and I'm going to embrace change. Change is a new opportunity to create value. What if halfway through the year they cut my budget in half? I have to think about how can I run these events in a different way while still having the same output. So really challenging myself to be creative when I hit change and uncertainty. So the second challenge I face is how do I sell to and engage with my stakeholders? And for me, my stakeholders are my customers. So I think of myself like a salesperson. I'm an account executive. The product that I'm selling is my idea and my program. So the first thing I do is sit down and listen to my stakeholders, just like an AE, a salesperson, would sit down and listen to their customers. I ask them questions. What do they need? What are their goals for the year? Then I build their trust. I build out what program I believe will deliver on those goals, and I sit back down with them and get their feedback. This is a two-way street. It's not just me delivering something and saying, here you go, here's the program. They truly need to be bought into it. And that's stage 3. That's partnering with your stakeholder on your plans. And to me, this is the purchase stage. To me, this is when my stakeholder has decided, yes, I'm going to do that. And often, they're choosing to use their budget to deliver on my program, so they truly are buying my program. And stage 4 is nurturing that relationship. So working closely with them throughout the process, sharing the successes, and adapting the program with them, making sure that what I'm delivering halfway through the year still meets their needs. The third challenge I have is how to scale my programs to maximize value. So I'm thinking about how do I package my programs to be leveraged by as many teams as possible, and how do I maximize the value of my programs? And I always think of this as the 80-20 rule. So what 80% of work that I'm doing is the same? So how can I maximize the value of my thinking? People pay me lots of money every day to go and work at Salesforce. How can I maximize the cost of what they're paying me so that I can drive the most time and drive the most impact? And I do this in 2 ways. First, how can I scale my structure to other programs? So what I've built for the events program, is there thinking there that I can re-leverage in different programs that I'm running? So I'm never starting from scratch. The second thing that I look at is how can I scale my program to as many regions as possible? So I do a piece of work, then think about how can I leverage this thinking and this work in other activities, and then how can I activate this in as many regions as possible? And here's an example of how I help to do this. So with every program, I always create a package. So using a document, I use Quip, which is a Salesforce tool, but you can use whatever document tool you have of choice. So in this, I deliver the program objective. I deliver a video explanation of what the document is, what the program is. Then I include an entire project plan about how to run your program in your market. I include all of the messaging, all of the content that's needed. So for example, for this events framework, I'm going to have, okay, here's all the demos, here's all the content that you can leverage at your 5 different events that you're going to run. Here's the framework of how to run your event. Here's the show flow of what I would recommend, and all of the assets in order to promote the event. So it's a full package, so someone in region can take this and run a whole events program without needing to spend too much time, just a little bit of time to tailor it to their region. And the last challenge I face is how do I measure the true value of my programs? So how do I measure the success of my programs? What are my value drivers? So let's say it's the end of the year, it's the end of 2022, and I've successfully delivered my events program with my 5 programs throughout the year. And I've managed to convince other regions to leverage this same events program. So I've activated my program in Germany, in the UK, Spain, Switzerland, and France. And points to anyone who recognized all the flags on the slide. And so we have our obvious metrics that we always look at when we're looking at an event plan. So what pipe gen did we have? So let's say, for an example, we delivered $100 million of new pipe, and we closed 10 million of that pipe. So pipe gen and revenue, pretty obvious metrics. The other metrics that I'm going to look at in the program are looking at what are the true additional value elements of my program. So the first is, what are the program learnings? What did I learn when I was putting this program together? What knowledge did my team develop that they now have? They have new skill sets that they can activate in other programs. So that's a benefit that's very difficult to measure, but is really important as you're trying to skill up your team. The second thing I delivered is I delivered this event playbook. And this playbook had everything that was needed to run these events in each of these different regions. So instead of every region starting from scratch, creating their own events program, they could take my playbook. Let's say it takes 20 hours to build out an events program. So I saved 20 hours of event planning in 5 different countries. So there's the benefit, the value of the hours that I saved, and then there's the additional value of what did that team do with that 20 hours that they got back, and what was the value of that new activity that they did. So starting to really think about the true value of the programs. And lastly, the strategic relationships that I built. So I partnered with 5 new marketers in 5 different countries, and I now have a pick up the phone type of relationship with them. And this is a value that won't be realized into the future, until the next time that I need to activate something in Germany, and I can call up the field marketer that lives in Germany and say, we need to do something fast. And they'll say, okay, Rebecca, you helped us so much last time, let's do it. So these additional values help to measure the true value of the programs that I create. And so in summary, the main points that I look at when designing strategic programs is, first, how do you build your program? So define the vision of your program, define the values, think about all of the different projects that make up your program, and those are individual projects which should have the whole project planning element to them. Think about how you're going to measure your program, what are the metrics you're going to use, and then what are the different risks. The next thing is treating your stakeholders like your customers. So listening to your stakeholders, building trust, partnering with them, and continuing to nurture that relationship. Lastly, think about how you're going to package your programs and scale them to truly maximize the value of the work that you're doing. Because the time that you spend on your work is really important, and you need to maximize that value as much as possible. And lastly, measure all the outputs of the program. Think beyond pipe gen, revenue. What are the other benefits and value that you're delivering to the business through your programs? So realize the true value of your programs. So thank you. I hope that was helpful for all of you today when thinking about how to create and design strategic programs that can scale. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And Jose, do we have time for questions? Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
So we'll take questions now. Does anybody have questions? Lots of insights here. Great. Here we go.
Hi, great presentation. One question is, what kind of troubles or just roadblocks usually come back to you when you're trying to implement this down?
I think a lot of the challenges that I face, first is that challenge of influence. The way that it works at Salesforce in EMEA is a lot of the people, stakeholders that I work with, they cover all of the products in the Salesforce portfolio, and I'm the product marketing manager for Service Cloud. And so I'm competing with my coworkers, all my PMMs on all the other clouds. So trying to get them, again, to buy into why it's important to focus on my product and then to run my program. The other challenges that we face is things that I think everyone faces and things that I mentioned, changing business needs, changing business markets. You know, the environment is changing, we're heading into recession, our messaging might change. How does that impact the programs that I'm doing? Are budgets being cut or being shifted elsewhere? How can I still deliver on my goals? So some of those kind of big challenges that I mentioned are the things that I hit every day that I have to mitigate around.
Give me one sec while I get there.
Making you work out, Jose.
Hi.
Hi.
So, one of the challenges of being a product marketer is that sometimes you have to make like all the decisions, but you don't necessarily have a clear vision on budgeting, resources, allocation, and worse, it might be sitting with the superior who you can only meet with once every 2 or 3 weeks because their schedule is so busy. How do you make scaling decisions and move forward and think quickly while also sort of navigating those issues where you don't have ownership?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of things. There's the kind of preparing your sales pitch for what you want to do. So again, when you're speaking to that senior leader, maybe you're trying to get their budget, truly understanding what their goals are and making sure that when you are sharing your ideas, that you're pitching it as you're trying to deliver X. This is why my idea will help you do that. This is how much it'll cost. This is the time that it'll take to realize that return on their investment. The other thing that I do is, Jose mentioned in my intro, relationships are really important, and I touched on it here too. That person may be the budget holder, but they're usually not the only one making the decision. Generally, they're going to be consulting their team. So how are you sharing your ideas and partnering with everyone on their team? So when it comes to discussing your idea, everyone else on their team is on board with that as well. So it's about what's that press tour for your idea? How are you networking? How are you sharing your ideas to make sure that everyone's bought in? And also making it as easy as possible. Like the playbook that I showed, that was a fake version of a real example where I used to really struggle to get airtime with our local marketers. And when I started to package things together and be like, hey, I can do all this work for you. I can put it in a package. So all you have to do is take it and activate it. Suddenly, I was like their favorite product marketing manager. And I was like, oh, that's all I had to do. It took me 3 years to figure this out. But really thinking about how can you make it as easy as possible for someone who needs to activate on your idea or make a decision, I think is really important, like truly thinking through that.
I think also having like roles and responsibilities like very clear. I have a different role, but I've worked in roles where we had to package things and then pass them on to local markets. And then Brazil, for example, is a very large local market, and they have they had some needs that were specific to the market. And what we would always like design for one market and then sort of stress it out to the rest of the markets. And then we would have like rogue Brazil doing their own thing. So what we started doing is sort of, okay, if this is a key market, big market, why don't we design for them and then see how that fits the other markets kind of thing. So I think like having roles and responsibilities well defined will help, my job is to package this, your job is to activate this. There's no more value necessarily in what you're doing versus what I'm doing, but we need to have this very clear. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you or for me, right? And so I don't know if you one of those 5 markets that you mentioned there, if there's one that's more needy or that you have to like take into account more than the other ones, or
yeah, I mean it's different. It's some markets need a lot more support, and others are like, hey, we know what we're doing, leave us alone. And so it's really trying to get them to buy into the value of you and your role. And I think you hit on it with Brazil as well. Like every market isn't made equal. So I'll spend a lot more time with UK, Germany, France than I will with South Africa, for example, because their market size is bigger. So when I'm thinking about my product and my goals, I need those markets to be successful first. And so also prioritizing who you're trying to work with, and like you said, who you're tailoring for and who just gets the package content and you don't do the tailoring. They're just not equal. It's not down to them personally, it's just down to their market size.
Any other questions? Still got time for more? No? Okay, so join me in thanking.
Thank you.
Once again. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So before we go to happy hour, I have quick announcements. I'm not going to make it all the way up there.